Hi everyone, in this video, this is a reply video to a very good comment on one of my last videos that I did. The video was regarding about doing stupid vignettes on your photos if you're a beginner, just like don't do that. And this was the image which I was using as my example. And then somebody left a very good comment. I'll just say here, Akirilos said, why did you frame her like that and with the space behind her and not in front of her? And why not just put her in the middle of the frame? And do I plan to add a backdrop in Photoshop later on and all that kind of stuff? So this is kind of more advanced version of portrait composition. And I'm going to do it with the aid of some stickmen. So as with pretty much everything in photography, there's lots of rules and all of them should be ignored or at least played with quite a bit. In general, the rule of portrait photography is if you have, let's say, person here, I'll draw an eye. So if you have a person in the part of the thirds of the image, so you'd have their eyes are in the kind of top third and in general they're on the left hand third or right hand third, doesn't really matter. It's usually they're not in the middle and usually not just off middle either side. It's usually they're right over on where there's only a third, where they take up the 1/3 of the image. So you could easily have 3 people in the image and they take up one side. So that's the simple kind of normal composition. Rule of thirds, everyone knows that. And generally if you're doing a kind of modelling portrait shot, you want the person to be looking into the image. So what happens is that you've got 2 types of space in an image where there's something here, and then you've got this area known as dead space or active space is what we'll call it. So you've got dead or you've got active space in this area. Now if it's dead, that means nothing is going to happen in this area. This is merely just a place for people's eyes to go to. So if it is for a magazine or something like that, then yeah, that's great, person there. And then if there's text on this side, that's good. And it looks like this person will be kind of interacting or, you know, has something to do with this side here. We can also call it active space, this area where there's nothing happening, because it can be, let's say the person is running. Okay, so now I've given them the effect that they are running that way. So now what happens is this empty space over at this side is now an area which something is going to move into. So if the person is running, if they're on a bike, if it's a car, then this area here is active space. So it's where something is going to happen. It leads the viewer into the idea of not only is there motion by the fact that the person or the object is in a state of motion, which you probably can't see in a photo unless there's kind of brilliant motion blur, but it gives you the idea that that's where it's going to be going. And generally this idea gives a good sense of balance to a photo. So even though all the colours stuff or all the interesting stuff visually is over here, this area here is a very important part to the image, because that helps balance. That's the future, this is the present, that's where things are going to be going, and that's where the eyes are going to be leading as well. But that's not to say that you have to do that. I would say in some cases, having the person over in the left, like this, or in the right, whether it's left or right makes no bearing, but just looking straight on into the camera. Well, that also has a very powerful effect as well. It creates unbalance, which effectively having an unbalanced image, which let's just say this is a door or something here, or you know, maybe a car park or something like that, then it kind of gives you a real like, whoa, what's going on here? And it brings the attention back to the person. So it's all about the eye contact going on this side, makes you focus here. So you're kind of looking at that person, there's all this empty, dead space at the side, and that unbalances the image and gives it a certain kind of power to it as well. However, the image which I had was like this. So we had the person here on the left hand side, the eyes were looking out of the image. So many people think, oh, that's totally wrong. You've got all this totally dead, is not active. I'm not going to be moving into it. I'm not going to be looking that way. I'm following where the eyes are focusing and they're focusing out of the image. That must be wrong. And indeed, it certainly is an area of where there's nothing happening. You're not going to be moving into it. It's not active in any way. So why would I do that? What would I do? Well, this, you really need to write a dissertation on this kind of stuff. You can write articles and articles and articles all about the composition of your images, certainly with portraits as well. I'm going to do a video in a wee while where I show you a million different head positions for portrait photography, and within 2 minutes you can have done over 1 million head positions and stuff like that. So portrait photography is very confusing, and just changing the position of somebody's head, changing the position of where their eyes are looking, all that kind of stuff, can drastically affect the look of their face, but also the feel of the image. And the image which we're looking at here, with Clarice here, as I said in the video here, is a classical kind of image, or is a more an aged look image. So it's somebody which maybe in the past or something like that. So the look which I'm going for in this one is that the dead space is not somewhere where we're going to be going into. It's not her future. It's not something for our eyes to be being led by. What we're actually looking here is more just at her and her gaze out of the image. And knowing that we're not gazing into anything, then it brings back the attention back to her. So for me, what I felt whenever I created this style of composition, or this angle of composition for this shot, is that when you look at the image, you feel it's unbalanced, you see the position of the eyes, and they're going out the image, but because you know there's nothing there, it brings you back to the model again. And seeing how there's the unbalance of the dead space, totally dead space, and the model, gives an unbalanced feeling to the image, which creates more pressure on the actual shot of the model. If I were to go more in depth with this, and I would be talking about how, because it's an old looking feeling image, it's the idea that she is looking out to a future which has already been, and the dead space behind her is her past. But because her future in this image of pretending to be an old-fashioned image has already happened, then we're not looking into her future. It's a bit too in-depth, but I'll probably say that this is like advanced portrait composition chat here. But I would say that in generally the rules of photography is have your person looking into the dead space. Certainly if you're going to be adding anything later into it, maybe text or any of that kind of stuff, logo, whatever. But the rule of don't have your person on one side of the image, looking out of the image, is a rule which you can happily break. But if you're going to break it, think about why you're breaking it and what kind of emphasis it gives on the subject, and how it also dictates the interaction of the viewer with the image that you've portrayed. So, sorry if that's a bit too high-end, but that's just my thoughts. Maybe any of you have done something which has totally broken the rules of photography, but it's actually come out exactly how you wanted it, and you think it's become a stronger, more purposeful image just because you didn't follow the rules of photography. Anyway, there you go. Hope that helps. Cheers. Bye-bye.